The wind screamed like a dying animal outside's hut. Ice crystals hit the metal walls with sounds like bullets. This was the third day of the storm, and knew it would last at least 2 more. The weather on 442B was always trying to kill him, but he had learned to live with it. Sat near his heater, drinking hot coffee from a battered metal cup. The generator hummed in the corner, keeping the lights on and the heat flowing. He had built this place himself, piece by piece, making it strong enough to survive the planet's terrible storms. Most people called him crazy for living here alone. Maybe they were right, but this was his home now. The storm outside grew louder. Checked his readings on the weather scanner. Wind speed was hitting 200 miles per hour. The temperature was dropping fast, reaching -60 degrees. Even his thick walls shook under the pressure. He had seen storms like this kill entire groups of colonists who were not prepared. Something slammed into his door. Jumped to his feet, spilling coffee on the floor. Nothing should be moving in weather like this. The impact came again, harder this time. Something was definitely out there trying to get in. Grabbed his rifle from the wall mount and moved toward the door. "Hello," he called out, but the wind swallowed his voice. The banging continued, desperate now. Could hear something else between the wind gusts. It sounded almost like crying. He moved closer to the door and listened. Yes, there was definitely someone out there, and they were in trouble. Did not hesitate. He threw back the heavy locks and pulled the door open. Ice and wind blasted into his warm hut like frozen knives. Through the swirling white storm, he saw a shape collapse just outside his door. It was not human. The creature was tall, maybe 7 feet, with long arms and legs. Her skin was a strange blue-silver color that seemed to glow faintly in the storm light. She wore some kind of armor that looked like it was grown instead of made, all curves and organic patterns. The armor was cracked and broken in several places, and a bright blue liquid was leaking out. She was definitely female, could tell, but unlike any woman he had ever seen. Her face was longer than human, with large eyes that were completely black. Her hair was white as snow and moved like it was underwater, even in the wind. The alien woman looked up at him with those huge dark eyes. She tried to speak, but only clicking sounds and whistles came out. Then she collapsed completely, the blue liquid spreading in the snow beneath her. Did not think about it. He dropped his rifle and grabbed her under the arms, pulling her into his hut. She was heavier than she looked, but he managed to drag her inside and slam the door shut against the storm. The woman lay on his floor, breathing hard and fast. The blue liquid was definitely blood, and there was a lot of it. Could see deep cuts on her arms and legs where the strange armor had been torn away. One particularly bad wound on her side was bleeding heavily. Had no idea what alien biology was like, but bleeding was bleeding. He ran to his medical kit and pulled out everything he had. Bandages, antiseptic, pain medicine, and surgical glue. He had learned basic medical treatment during his years alone on this planet. When you lived by yourself in the middle of nowhere, you had to be your own doctor. He knelt beside the alien woman and started cleaning her wounds. She flinched when the antiseptic touched her cuts, but she did not pull away. Instead, she watched him with those enormous black eyes, her head tilted like she was confused. Worked quickly but carefully. The blue blood was thicker than human blood, almost like syrup, but it seemed to respond to the antiseptic the same way. He used surgical glue to close the worst cuts, then wrapped everything in clean bandages. "There," he said softly, sitting back to look at his work. "That should help." The alien woman stared at him. She pointed at herself with one long finger, then made more clicking sounds. Wished he could understand what she was trying to say. She reached for something on her belt, a small device that had been partially crushed. She pressed a few buttons, and it made some weak beeping sounds before going silent. The woman looked frustrated and tried hitting it a few times, but nothing happened. "Broken?" asked, pointing at the device. She nodded, which surprised him. Maybe some gestures were universal. Looked at the device more closely. It appeared to be some kind of computer or communicator, far more advanced than anything he had ever seen. But right now it was just expensive junk. He held out his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, she gave it to him. The device was incredibly light, made of materials that felt warm to the touch. Could see where the storm had damaged it. Some kind of crystal had been cracked, and several tiny components had come loose inside. I might be able to fix this, said, even though she probably could not understand him. But first, you need rest. He helped her move to his bed, which was really just a thick mattress on a metal frame. She was weak from blood loss and exhaustion, but she managed to lie down, covered her with his spare blankets and checked her bandages one more time. The alien woman closed her eyes but could tell she was not really sleeping. She was listening to every sound, ready to run or fight if she had to. Whatever had hurt her was still out there somewhere, and she knew it. Sat down at his workbench with her broken device. He had always been good with electronics, and he had plenty of spare parts from his own equipment. Maybe he could get this thing working again. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside his small hut, a human and an alien shared warmth and shelter. Did not know who she was or where she had come from. He did not know what had hurt her or why she was alone in the storm. But none of that mattered right now. She had come to his door for help and he had given it. That was what humans did. Worked on the broken device for 3 hours while the alien woman rested. The storm outside was starting to weaken, but it was still too dangerous to go anywhere. He used parts from his old radio and some wire from his backup generator. The device was incredibly complex, but the basic principles seemed similar to human electronics. When he finally got a small light to blink on the device, the alien woman sat up quickly in bed. She looked at him with surprise, then pointed at the device and made excited clicking sounds. Handed it back to her. Try it now. She pressed several buttons in a specific pattern. The device glowed brighter and made soft humming sounds. Then it spoke. Translation matrix, rebuilding, language patterns detected, English variant identified. The voice was mechanical but clear. The alien woman looked shocked that it was working. She pressed more buttons and spoke in her clicking language. Greetings, unknown being, the device translated in its flat voice. I am of the Ethereal Collective Reconnaissance Division. You have assisted me. This is unexpected. Sat down across from her. This is my home. You were hurt, so I helped you. That's what anyone would do. Tilted her head when the translation finished. What anyone would do? This is not correct. Your species was observed as primitive and self-focused. Assistance to unknown aliens is not predicted behavior. Well, the predictions were wrong, said simply. What hurt you? What are you running from? Was quiet for a long moment. She looked around his small hut, taking in the simple furniture, the basic electronics, the handmade repairs on everything. Her expression was hard to read, but she seemed confused by something. You repair my communication device with primitive components, she said finally. You treat my injuries with basic medical supplies, yet both functions work. How is this possible? Shrugged, you make do with what you have. I've been living here alone for 4 years. You learn to fix things when they break because nobody else is going to do it. 4 years, sat up, then winced as her wounds reminded her to be careful. You survived 4 seasonal cycles on this death world, alone. Death world, looked around his hut. It's not that bad once you understand the weather patterns. The storms are predictable. The wildlife is dangerous but not smart. The main thing is being prepared. Stared at him. This planet is classified as uninhabitable by collective standards. Surface temperature variations exceed safe ranges. Weather systems produce lethal conditions. No rational species would attempt colonization. Good thing humans aren't always rational, said with a small smile. made a sound that might have been laughter. This is truth. My people have observed human expansion for 50 cycles. You establish colonies in locations that should kill you. When conditions become impossible, you adapt instead of leaving. It is puzzling. So your people have been watching us? Asked. Observation only. The ethereal collective monitors developing species but does not interfere. Humans were categorized as minor importance. Limited technology, short, poor coordination between groups. Nodded, all true. We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy, I'm guessing. Far from it, agreed. Yet you accomplish things that should not be possible with your limitations. She tried to stand up, but her legs were still weak. Helped her to the chair by his workbench. She looked at his tools and spare parts with obvious curiosity. You created new components for my translator, using these simple materials. Just basic electronics, said. Your device works on the same principles as my radio, just much more advanced. I bridged the broken connections with copper wire and used a capacitor from my emergency beacon to replace your cracked crystal. Picked up one of his tools, a simple screwdriver that had made himself from scrap metal. In my culture, broken technology is discarded. New items are grown as needed. That sounds wasteful, said. Besides, sometimes fixing something yourself makes it work better than before. This concept is strange to me, admitted. Why not simply use superior tools? Because superior tools aren't always available, and sometimes the simple solution is the best one. They were interrupted by a low humming sound from outside. Had never heard anything like it before. Went completely still, her large black eyes wide with fear. They have found me, she whispered. Who? Asked, but he was already moving toward his weapons rack. Devourers, said. The translator's mechanical voice could not convey emotion, but could see terror in her posture. Biomechanical hunters. They consume technology and organic matter to enhance themselves. I was fleeing from them when the storm forced me down. The humming sound grew louder, coming from multiple directions now. Looked out his reinforced window and saw shapes moving through the dying storm. They were hard to see clearly, but they looked wrong somehow, like machines that had been infected with something alive. How many? Asked, checking his rifle. Unknown, they adapt to opposition. They do not stop hunting until prey is consumed or they are destroyed. Struggled to stand. You must leave this place. Take your transportation and flee. I have brought death to your home. Looked at her in surprise. Leave. This is my home. Besides, you're injured and can't travel. I am acceptable loss, said. Your survival is more important than mine. This is logical. Maybe logical, said, loading his weapon, but not right. He moved around the hut quickly, checking his defenses. The walls were reinforced steel with energy shielding. The windows were bulletproof. He had backup power systems and emergency supplies. This place had been built to survive anything the planet could throw at him. You cannot fight devourers with primitive weapons, protested. Watch me, said calmly. He pulled out a tablet and showed her a schematic of his property. I've got motion sensors here, here, and here, automated defenses around the perimeter, backup generators in case they cut my main power, and if things get really bad, I've got some surprises they won't expect. Looked at the defensive plans with amazement. You prepared for siege warfare. I prepared for everything, said. That's how you survive alone on a death world. The humming sounds were getting closer now, and could see more shapes moving through the snow. Watched him prepare with obvious confusion. Why do you not abandon me? She asked. I am alien to you. My death would not affect your survival. Stopped checking his equipment and looked at her directly. You came to my door for help. That makes you my responsibility now. Responsibility for unknown beings is not logical survival strategy. Maybe not, agreed, but it's the right thing to do. Outside, the first devourer reached his perimeter fence. The first alarm went off at exactly 1547. Had built his security system himself, using motion detectors from old mining equipment and sirens from emergency kits. When something big moved near his fence, he knew about it. Motion detected, Sector 3, his computer announced in its calm voice. Looked at his security screen. The creature moving through the snow was like nothing he had ever seen. It was roughly human-shaped but wrong in every detail. Its arms were too long, ending in hands that looked like they had been built from spare machine parts. Its head was a collection of sensors and organic tissue fused together. When it moved, mechanical joints made clicking sounds, but organic muscles provided the power. "Devourer Scout," said from behind him. She had managed to stand and was looking over his shoulder at the screen. They probed defenses first, learning weaknesses before the main attack. The creature reached fence and stopped. It tilted its hybrid head and examined the simple wire barrier. Then it reached out with one mechanical hand and touched the fence. Pressed a button on his control panel. 20,000 volts of electricity shot through the fence. The devourer jumped back, its organic parts smoking, but it did not fall down. Instead, it studied the fence more carefully. "They learn fast," observed. "Learning and adaptation are their primary advantages," agreed. "They consume technology to understand it, then incorporate improvements into themselves." On the screen, the devourer was doing something to its hand. Watched as the creature's fingers changed shape, growing what looked like insulation around them. When it touched the fence again, the electricity had no effect. "Son of a," started, then caught himself. "That's not good." The devourer climbed over the fence easily and moved toward the hut. 2 more alarms went off as other creatures triggered different sensors. Security screen lit up with red warnings as at least 6 devourers approached from different directions. "They surround us," said. "Standard hunting pattern, no escape routes." Was already moving around his hut, flipping switches and checking systems. "Good thing I'm not planning to run." He activated his first line of defense. Hidden speakers around his property began playing recordings of industrial noise at high volume. The sound was meant to mask his movements and confuse sensor-based hunters. "Audio countermeasures," explained when looked confused. "If they hunt by sound, this should give them headaches." On his screens, could see the devourers hesitate. Their sensor clusters were twitching and rotating as they tried to filter useful information from the noise. It was working, but knew it would not work for long. "Motion detected, Sector 1. Motion detected, Sector 5. Motion detected, Sector 2. More alarms. Counted 8 distinct devourers now, maybe more. They were spreading out around his position, taking their time to study his defenses. "You cannot fight this many," said, "even with your preparations." "I don't plan to fight them," replied. "I plan to make them regret coming here." He opened a metal case beside his workbench and pulled out what looked like a simple remote control. "See, the thing about living alone on a hostile planet is that everything tries to kill you. Weather, animals, equipment failures, food poisoning. You learn to be creative." Pressed a button on the remote. Outside, small explosions went off around his property. They were not big enough to hurt the devourers, but they served a different purpose. Each explosion released a cloud of chemical powder into the air. "What is that substance?" asked. "Fertilizer mixed with aluminum powder and some other things," said. "Normally I use it to clear snow from my landing pad, but it has other uses." The powder settled on the devourers as they moved through the clouds. At first, nothing happened, then pressed another button. The fertilizer mixture ignited. Bright flashes lit up the area around his hut as the powder burned on contact with the creatures. The organic parts of the devourers caught fire immediately, while their mechanical components began to overheat and malfunction. 2 of the creatures fell down, their hybrid bodies too damaged to function. The others stumbled away from the burning powder, but they were hurt and angry now. Impressive, said, but they will adapt to this tactic quickly. She was right. Could see the surviving devourers changing their approach. They were moving more carefully now, staying away from areas where powder might be hidden. Some were altering their external surfaces, growing what looked like protective shells. Yeah, I figured, said. That's why I have backup plans. He moved to another control panel and started a different system. Around his property, hidden panels opened in the ground. What rose up looked like simple irrigation sprinklers, the kind used for watering crops. Agricultural equipment, asked. Modified agricultural equipment, corrected. Instead of water, the sprinklers began shooting streams of industrial acid. Had been using the stuff to clean mineral deposits from his equipment for years. It was incredibly corrosive to both metal and organic materials. The acid streams caught 3 devourers before they could adapt. Their hybrid bodies began dissolving wherever the acid touched them. They made horrible sounds as they died, part mechanical scream and part organic wail. But the remaining creatures were learning. Watch them observe their fallen companions, then begin changing their outer surfaces again. They were growing protective coatings that could resist acid. How many more surprises do you have? Asked. Enough, said grimly. He was already preparing his next defense. The truth was, he had been planning for something like this for years. Not alien hunters specifically, but any situation where he might be outnumbered and living alone made you paranoid, but it also made you creative. His next surprise was simpler but nastier. Around the hut, he had buried dozens of small explosive charges. Not enough to damage his own building, but plenty to hurt anything trying to get close. As the surviving devourers advanced, started triggering the charges in sequence. The explosions threw up clouds of dirt, metal fragments, and superheated gas. The creatures were tough, but they were not indestructible. One more devourer fell, its legs too damaged to support it. Another retreated with obvious injuries. But 4 were still advancing, and they were getting smarter about avoiding his traps. They are adapting faster than you can deploy countermeasures, observed. Maybe, admitted, but I'm not done yet. He opened his weapons case and pulled out his hunting rifle. It was not fancy, just a reliable projectile weapon designed for taking down large predators, but had made some modifications over the years. Kinetic projectile weapon, said. Devourers have encountered these before. Their armor adapts quickly to physical impacts. Not to these impacts, said confidently. His ammunition was special. Each bullet was filled with a compound he had developed for dealing with the planet's armored wildlife. When the bullets hit something, they did not just punch holes. They exploded inside the target, releasing a cocktail of acid, incendiary gel, and metal fragments. Took careful aim at the nearest devourer and fired. The bullet hit the creature's center mass and detonated. The hybrid monster was torn apart from the inside as the chemical payload did its work. It fell down and did not get up again. Explosive rounds with chemical payloads, explained, reloading. I call them problem solvers. But the surviving devourers had seen their companion die, and they were already adapting. They began moving in unpredictable patterns, making themselves harder to hit. They also started using the terrain for cover, hiding behind rocks and snow drifts. Your defenses are effective but finite, said. What happens when your ammunition is depleted? Looked at her with a grim smile. Then we move to Plan B. What is Plan B? Get creative. The real attack began at sunset. The 3 surviving devourers had spent 2 hours studying defenses, learning from each trap and weapon he used against them. Now they moved with purpose, their hybrid bodies adapted to resist his chemical weapons and explosive rounds. Main power grid compromised, computer announced calmly, switching to backup systems. One of the devourers had found his main power line and severed it with surgical precision. The lights in the hut flickered, then stabilized as the backup generator kicked in. Had expected this and planned accordingly. Your primary systems are disabled, observed. She had recovered enough to move around, though she was still weak from her injuries. Tactical situation is deteriorating. Systems are disabled, corrected, checking his backup power readings. Primary power was just the decoy. He flipped a series of switches under his workbench. Around the hut, new lights came on as his real backup systems activated. These were hidden generators he had built into the foundation itself, powered by geothermal energy from the planet's core. The Devourers had cut the obvious power source while leaving the real one untouched. You prepared multiple redundant systems, said with what sounded like admiration. Always have a backup for your backup, replied, and a backup for that. The Devourers reached his outer defenses and began their assault. They had learned to avoid his remaining traps, moving carefully around the areas where they had seen explosions earlier, but had anticipated this too. He activated a new set of charges, these ones placed specifically where he thought the creatures would try to take cover. The explosions caught two Devourers by surprise, damaging their legs and slowing their advance. Psychological warfare, explained when looked confused. Make them think they're smarter than they are, then prove them wrong. But the Devourers were learning from this lesson too. The surviving creature stopped advancing and began doing something to its fallen companions. Watched in disgust as it consumed parts of the damaged Devourers, incorporating their adaptive improvements into itself. It grows stronger by consuming its allies, said. This is standard Devourer behavior when hunting becomes difficult. Lovely, muttered. The enhanced Devourer was now much larger than before, with additional armor plating grown from its consumed companions. Worse, it seemed to have gained new abilities. Mechanical tendrils emerged from its back, each one equipped with different tools and sensors. The creature resumed its attack, but now it was much more dangerous. One tendril shot out and smashed through his reinforced window. Another began cutting through his outer wall with what looked like a plasma torch. Hull breach in progress, the computer announced. Structural integrity at 78%. Grabbed his rifle and fired at the tendrils trying to breach his walls. His explosive rounds damaged them but did not stop them. The creature's adaptive armor was already adjusting to resist his ammunition. Your weapons are insufficient against enhanced Devourer, said. She had pulled out her own weapon, a sleek device that hummed with energy. I will assist. Her weapon fired beams of bright blue light that cut through the Devourer's tendrils much more effectively than bullets. The creature pulled back its damaged appendages and reassessed the threat. Nice shooting, said, reloading his rifle. What else can that thing do? Multiple functions, replied, adjusting settings on her weapon. But limited ammunition. Ethereal weapons are energy-intensive. They worked together as the Devourer renewed its assault. Used his knowledge of the terrain and his prepared defenses while provided precision strikes with her advanced weapon. It was an odd partnership, primitive human stubbornness combined with sophisticated alien technology. But the Devourer was adapting to both their tactics. It began using hit-and-run attacks, striking quickly then retreating before they could respond effectively. Each attack damaged the hut a little more, and could see that his defenses would not hold forever. Structural integrity at 45%, the computer reported after another assault. Multiple hull breaches detected. We need a new strategy, said. Her weapon was nearly drained, and she was breathing heavily from the exertion. Was thinking fast. All his prepared defenses were either used up or ineffective against the enhanced Devourer. His ammunition was running low, and the creature was getting stronger with each attack. Then he looked at his workshop and smiled grimly. I've got an idea, he said, but you're not going to like it. Explain. The thing keeps adapting to our weapons, right? learning to resist whatever we throw at it. Correct, this is primary devourer survival mechanism. But what if we throw something at it that's not a weapon? Began pulling equipment off his workbench. Old radio parts, broken tools, scrap metal, chemical containers. 2, it looked like junk. 2, it was raw materials. You plan to construct improvised weapons? Asked. Not weapons, corrected, working quickly to assemble his creation. Trap. What he was building looked like an ugly combination of radio antenna, chemical sprayer, and electrical generator. Wires ran everywhere, connecting components that had never been designed to work together. It was completely improvised and utterly unprofessional. It was also brilliant. Electromagnetic pulse generator with chemical catalyst, explained as he worked. The devourer has adapted to resist our weapons, but it's still part machine. Hit it with the right frequency, and all those mechanical components will interfere with each other. This device is not designed for such applications, protested. Failure probability is extremely high. Maybe, agreed, making final connections. But if it works, it'll scramble every circuit in that thing's brain. Another assault shook the hut. The devourer was getting impatient and taking bigger risks. One of its tendrils smashed completely through the wall, reaching inside to grab for them. Hit it with his rifle butt while severed it with her weapon. Structural integrity at 22%, the computer announced. Critical failure imminent. Time's up, said. He activated his improvised device and aimed it at the hole in his wall. The machine made horrible screeching sounds as incompatible components tried to work together. Sparks flew from loose connections, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. For a moment, thought it was going to explode and kill them both. Then it worked. A pulse of electromagnetic energy shot out through the breach in the wall. When it hit the devourer, every mechanical component in the creature's body began malfunctioning at once. Its adaptive systems tried to compensate, but they were getting conflicting signals from damaged sensors and overloaded circuits. The creature thrashed wildly as its own enhanced abilities turned against it. Tendrils that had been precisely controlled now moved randomly, damaging other parts of its body. Its adaptive armor began reshaping itself chaotically, creating weak points instead of protection. And watched through the hole in the wall as the enhanced devourer tore itself apart. Its biological and mechanical components could no longer coordinate properly, and the creature collapsed in a twitching heap. Impossible, whispered. Devourers do not self-destruct. Their programming prevents such failures. Their programming assumed they'd be fighting proper weapons, said, switching off his device before it caught fire. Sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects. They waited in tense silence for 10 minutes, but the devourer did not move again. Its hybrid body lay still in the snow, finally defeated by its own adaptations. Target eliminated, said with satisfaction. I love it when a plan comes together. Stared at him in amazement. You defeated an enhanced devourer using salvaged components and improvised engineering. I solved a problem using available resources, corrected. That's what humans do. Outside, the last of the storm was finally ending. Stars were becoming visible through the breaking clouds, but knew this was not over yet. The first light of dawn revealed the full extent of the battle. His property looked like a war zone. His fence was destroyed. His lawn was covered with craters from explosions, and alien blood stained the snow in several places. The bodies of 6 devourers lay scattered around his hut like broken toys. Stood in his doorway, drinking coffee from his battered metal cup and surveying the damage. His home was badly damaged but still standing. The walls had multiple holes. Most of his defensive systems were destroyed, and his backup generator was making concerning noises. This will take weeks to repair, he said calmly, as if alien death machines attacked his house every Tuesday. Watched him from inside the hut, still amazed by everything she had witnessed. "You show no distress at this destruction." "Stuff can be replaced," said with a shrug. "Besides, it could have been worse." Worse? Looked at the devastation around them. How could this situation have been worse? "We could have lost," pointed out, "and I've got insurance." He was joking about the insurance, but's translator did not understand human humor very well. She tilted her head in confusion, trying to figure out what kind of insurance would cover alien attacks. A low humming sound filled the air, but this time it was different from the Devourers. This sound was musical, almost like singing. Immediately straightened up and moved to the broken window. "Collective ships," she said with obvious relief. My distress beacon finally reached them. 3 sleek vessels descended through the morning sky, their surfaces reflecting the sunrise like mirrors. They were beautiful in an alien way, all curves and flowing lines that suggested they had been grown rather than built. The ships landed gracefully in destroyed yard, their hulls shifting color as they touched down. Tall figures emerged from the ships, wearing armor similar to's but undamaged. They moved with fluid grace, their silver-blue skin gleaming in the sunlight. Counted 12 ethereals total, and they were all carrying weapons much more advanced than anything he had seen. One of them approached the hut, speaking in the rapid clicking language. Responded, and they had a brief conversation before the newcomer noticed. "This is the primitive who provided assistance," the ethereal asked through his own translator device. His tone suggested he found this hard to believe. "This is," said firmly. "He saved my life and defended me against 6 Devourers." The lead ethereal looked around at the battle damage with obvious skepticism. "Scan the area for concealed weapon systems. Humans do not possess technology sufficient to defeat enhanced Devourers." Several of the ethereals began examining the wreckage with handheld devices, watched them work while finishing his coffee. They seemed particularly interested in the remains of his improvised electromagnetic pulse generator. "Commander," one of the ethereals called out, "I am detecting no advanced technology. Weapons appear to be chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles. Defensive systems are improvised from agricultural and communications equipment." Commander looked confused. "That is impossible. Devourers cannot be defeated with such primitive methods." "Yet they are dead," pointed out. Decided to speak up. "Would you like some coffee? I've got enough for everyone." The ethereal stared at him. Commander stepped closer, studying like he was an interesting specimen. "You offer hospitality to unknown aliens?" asked. "Why not?" replied. "You seem friendly enough, and your friend here helped me fight off the monsters." "Friend?" looked at with surprise. "You have formed social bonds with this primitive." "He is not primitive," said sharply. "He defeated Devourers using intelligence and resourcefulness. He protected me when abandoning me would have been safer. He treated my injuries and repaired my equipment despite having no obligation to assist. These actions are not logical from survival perspective," observed. "No," agreed. "They are something better than logical, they are right." Was starting to feel uncomfortable with being discussed like he was not there. "Look, I don't know about all this philosophical stuff. I just did what anyone would do." "But that is exactly the point," said, turning to address her commander directly. "He believes what he did was normal. In human culture, providing aid to strangers is expected behavior, even when it involves personal risk." "Impossible," said flatly. "No species evolves such traits. Altruism toward non-relatives reduces survival probability." "Maybe," said, "but it's the right thing to do." Commander spent the next hour interviewing and examining the battle site. His team took detailed scans of everything, trying to understand how primitive human technology had accomplished something their advanced weapons often failed to do. "Your electromagnetic pulse device should not have functioned," one of the technicians reported. The components are incompatible and the power requirements exceed available energy sources. But it did work, pointed out. Yes, the technician agreed reluctantly. The device functioned despite violating multiple engineering principles. Sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects, said, repeating what he had told during the battle. While the ethereals worked, began cleaning up his property. He gathered the usable pieces of his defensive systems and started planning repairs. The ethereals watched him work with growing amazement. He begins reconstruction immediately after traumatic combat experience, one of them observed. And he shows no signs of psychological distress, another added. Humans have remarkable mental resilience, explained. They adapt to impossible situations and continue functioning. Commander approached as he was sorting through salvageable equipment. Human, my reconnaissance officer has submitted a report recommending formal diplomatic contact with your species. This is unusual. Why unusual? Asked, not looking up from his work. Humans were classified as minor importance. Limited technology, short, poor coordination between population groups. All true, agreed cheerfully. We're not the most impressive species in the galaxy. Yet you accomplish remarkable things despite your limitations. Finally stopped working and looked up at the alien commander. Maybe our limitations are what make us strong. When you can't rely on superior technology or natural advantages, you learn to be creative. When you know you're going to die someday, you focus on making your short time count. When your people don't always get along, you appreciate it more when they do. This is philosophical perspective I have not encountered before, said thoughtfully. It's not philosophy, corrected. It's just common sense. As the day progressed, more ethereal ships arrived to investigate the Devourer attack. Word of a human defeating enhanced Devourers with improvised weapons was spreading through their fleet. Many wanted to see this impossible primitive for themselves. Found himself giving tour of his defensive systems to groups of confused alien scientists. He explained his reasoning behind each trap and weapon, how he had adapted agricultural equipment for military purposes, and why he had chosen to stand and fight instead of fleeing. The key is preparation, he told one group. You can't predict exactly what will try to kill you, but you can be ready for anything. And the psychological component, asked an ethereal psychologist. Why did you not abandon to ensure your own survival? Because that would have been wrong, said simply. The psychologist made notes on a handheld device. Define wrong in this context. Thought for a moment. She came to my home for help. That made her my responsibility. You don't abandon people who need your help, even if they're different from you. Even when helping them endangers your own life. Especially then. By evening, Commander had made his decision. He approached as the human was welding a patch over one of the holes in his hut wall. Of the humans, said formally, the ethereal collective would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with your species. Turned off his welding torch and lifted his safety mask. That's nice. Will it involve more aliens trying to kill me? Negative. The diplomatic protocols specifically prohibit hostile contact. Good, said, returning to his work. I've got enough excitement for 1 week. Approached as the ethereal ships prepared to depart. She would be leaving with them, returning to her people to file her report and recover from her injuries. I must thank you again, she said. You saved my life and taught me something important about your species. What's that? Asked. That strength is not about having the best weapons or the strongest armor. True strength comes from refusing to give up, especially when you are protecting someone else. Smiled. You'd fit in well with humans. We're pretty stubborn when it comes to doing the right thing. Perhaps I will return someday to study human culture more extensively, said. With your permission, of course. You're welcome any time, said sincerely. Just try to avoid bringing any more devourers with you. As the ethereal ships lifted off into the evening sky, returned to repairing his home. He had work to do, and the next storm season was only a few months away. He needed to be ready. Above him, the stars were coming out, and somewhere among them, an alien reconnaissance officer was writing a report that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity, but did not think about such grand things. He just focused on fixing what was broken and preparing for whatever came next. It was what humans did.